I'm afraid to leave my room without pepper spray. I'm afraid that if I leave my room, it will be broken into, and my life has been negatively impacted for quite a while, said one woman. Another woman, Deborah Baconial, stated that before, it was nice. We'd have barbecues outside, and you could hang out with just about anybody in the building. And the neighbors all looked out for each other, and it was a pretty good place to live. However, the situation started to change about a year ago, when a couple of squatters started sleeping in the hallways. More people she didn't recognize started showing up in the hallways and in the laundry room. Used needles piled up by the dumpster. In 2022, police were called to the building 67 times. This rate has skyrocketed in the following year, with the unwanted person being the most common complaint. My biggest wish is that they clean up the building and make it safe for us to live again, so we don't have to leave, said McConiel, according to a Fox 9 article. Squatting is a problem in our state. It is a safety problem as well as a legal problem and must be dealt with. According to dictionary.com, a squatter is a person who unlawfully occupies an uninhabited building or unused land. This could include a person who is living in an apartment and has stopped paying rent, or someone who moves into a building without the owner's permission. And it's a problem for police, residents, and landlords. According to iPropertyManagement.com, 44.7% of landlords have evicted a tenant. And enforcing eviction costs landlords an average of $3,500 per eviction.
Wow.
According to Todd Littlejohn-Quest, the vice president of the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association, once a squatter has moved onto property, it can take 2 months and some would say even up to years to evict that person. Landlords and police have problems with squatters in this state due to Minnesota Statute 504B.001 Subdivision 12, which defines the residential tenant. It defines residential tenant as a person who is occupying a dwelling in a residential building under a lease or contract, whether oral or written, that requires the payment of money in exchange for services. All other regular occupants of that dwelling unit or resident of a manufactured home park. The part of this clause that allows squatters to have more rights than they should is that all other regular occupants of that dwelling unit. Squatters in courts take this phrase and use it to give squatters a legal right to live in a building that they are not paying for. This is a problem to residents, especially of the building that the squatters are living in. According to an article by the Minnesota Reformer in 2022, an apartment in Bemidji, where Rachel Green has lived for 14 years, has nearly been taken over by squatters. Every day she leaves her apartment not knowing what to expect. The hallways are filled with graffiti. The windows are smashed out. Shirtless young men, high on meth or opioids, wander in and out of unlocked doors. The conditions in the apartment continued to worsen as property was destroyed. Green says, "We stayed here and had to tough it out because we didn't want squatters coming into our apartment." Squatting is an issue for landlords as well. In order to get a squatter to leave their building, they must first give the squatter an eviction notice. If the court side with the squatter instead of the landlord, or the squatter refuses to leave, the landowner must then file an unlawful detainer lawsuit, hire a lawyer, and prove that the land is theirs. This takes time and money, as I've already stated. After the courts have said that the squatter has to leave, the landowner cannot self-evict the squatter. They must wait for the courts and the law enforcement to get them to leave. And they cannot shut off the utilities of the building or change the locks until the person leaves. Squatting is an issue for the police as well. Squatting becomes trespassing if the owner establishes that the squatter is not welcome. The legal definition of a trespasser is the unlawful occupation of or interference with land or property belonging to someone else. Trespassing can take different forms, such as squatting. According to Tom Ehrenberg, a commander at the Woodbury Police Department, trespassing becomes a crime if the trespasser is told that they must leave and not return. Unless there's a no trespassing sign, specific language must be used in form signed in order to effect a trespass. Police cannot force a trespasser to leave on the first offense. They must tell the person they have to leave and then wait for the person to either not leave or leave and come back before they can be arrested for trespassing. Additionally, if the trespasser comes back after they arrested, then the landowner must file an eviction. This is a great annoyance and inconvenience to the police, according to Tom Ehrenberg, as they must wait for the person to leave and come back or stay before they can be arrested. In Florida, Tom Ehrenberg says, police can arrest for trespassing on the first offense at their own discretion. He says that if this were the case in Minnesota, then police would be able to spend their time on much more needed issues. One case, Quinn versus LMC, Northeast Minneapolis Holdings, LLC, shows the advantage that squatters are getting over landlords. LMC owns and operates a 280-unit Minneapolis apartment building called Nordhaus. Sometime in 2018, Quinn moved into a Nordhaus apartment leased by JS, her partner. JS's lease with LMC provided no one else may occupy the apartment. A person is not listed on the lease must not stay in the apartment for more than 14 consecutive days. Quinn was not listed on the lease and never obtained written consent from LMC to stay in the apartment. She also never made payments directly to LMC. The apartment was Quinn's sole residence. JS and Quinn shared a single key fob. JS's lease was set to expire in April of 2021, and JS began moving out. The apartment was notified that Quinn was living there, and Quinn was sent an application for rent, which she never submitted. In February 2021, JS gave LMC the notice of her intent to vacate the apartment when the lease expired. However, Quinn continued to live in the apartment. Eventually, Quinn was found living in the apartment, was told that the lease was expired, and the LMC deactivated her key fob. However, Quinn chose not to leave the apartment so that she would not get locked out. Quinn petitioned for relief under the Minnesota statute law, claiming that she was a residential tenant. LMC petitioned for eviction. The court decided that Quinn qualified as an other regular occupant under the law and thus was entitled to relief as a residential tenant. LMC was told to reactivate the key fob and pay attorney fees as well as a $500 fine. LMC then had the case reviewed by a judge who agreed with the court's initial findings. Finally, LMC appealed, stating that Quinn was not an other regular occupant, that she was a trespasser, that the terms of JS's lease did not include Quinn, and that LMC never gave Quinn consent to live in the apartment. The meaning of the term other regular occupant involves a question of statutory interpretation. This is just one case of landlords being taken advantage of by squatters. And so I propose that we clarify Statute 504B.001, Subdivision 12, and clarify the meaning of other regular occupant so that it does not include squatters and trespassers. Additionally, I propose that we create a law allowing police to arrest under their discretion for trespassing on the first offense, and create a law making it easier for landlords to evict trespassers and squatters. Some say that allowing squatters to live in buildings is helping the poor. However, if we want to help the poor, we need to help the landlords. They are the ones that are allowing cheaper housing for the poor, the middle class, and the lower class who are looking to live within the law. If we allow squatting, we are hurting the landlords who are helping the poor who are trying to live legally, and we are additionally hurting the poor who are trying to live legally as their homes are being destroyed and their lives are being put at risk. Squatting is a problem in our state. It's a problem for landlords, police, and other people living in the buildings, and it must be addressed.